Hey guys, Chris here at Volker Precision. Today we're going to be talking about our Mk2 universal compensator, and these are universal in the fit and will literally fit anything that has a half 28 threaded barrel and fires 9mm rounds. We've installed them on certainly plenty of handguns, but we've also got them on PCCs, subguns, literally anything that has a half 28 threaded barrel and fires 9mm. The installation is unique but very simple and requires no thread glue, no rock set, nothing at all. It's got a proprietary design in its installation, and works really well with nothing that will lock this to your barrel permanently. The cool unique factor about this compensator is if you want to run it today and not tomorrow, you could take it off. If you want to run it on the Glock today and a SIG tomorrow, great, swap it out. Work over and over and over again, and there's no limitations on how many times you can, within reason, swap it out. So yeah, let's get to the installation. Alright guys, when you buy your universal comp, this is how it's going to look when you get it. Inside you've got your compensator itself, and inside here are your shim washers and compression washer. The gold washer that you see there is the compression washer. That's the main holding power within this system. Tools you need, items you need I should say, are going to be 3/4 inch wrench, the compensator and shims itself, a piece of paper, which I'll explain in a minute, and probably a calculator. Your phone will do, just something to make some calculations. There is a little bit of math to figure these out. First thing you want to do is remove your slide from your frame, and then go ahead and remove your recoil spring and your thread protector and set it aside. Now, I find the best way to install these is in a bench vise, but you could do this holding on to the barrel with a crescent wrench or another wrench. You just want to be careful with marring it up or denting it or whatever. So whatever you use, just make sure it's nice and clean and dent-free and all that good stuff. Same thing with your bench vise. You don't want to be clamping, your nice brand new firearm components in some sort of old beat up huge serration jaws, things like that. If it is a serrated jaw type vise, hold it in between a couple pieces of plastic, leather, your belt, canvas, something like that to protect it. But first thing we want to do is drop the barrel down, leaving it in the slide. Have enough room protruding out the front here that when we install a comp, it doesn't end up hitting the slide. So we want to stick it out a little bit. Just like this is great. And we'll set it in the vise here and go ahead and clamp it. So now it's secured very tightly in the vise, and we can go ahead and start working on this thing. First thing we want to do though is get our shims out, and I'll give you a little description of the shims. We've got our spring washer, compression washer here, and this is actually what keeps tension. When you tighten this down, this spring washer will compress and actually create tension, actual compression, and keep the comp in tension on the barrel. And that's the only thing that's needed to hold this on there, and the reason we don't need to use rock set or any of these other things. So for now, let's go ahead and set that aside. And then we're going to get 3 sets of shims, 2 shims each bag, and the numbers represent the thickness of the shim. So 3 represents 3/1000ths of shim, 5/1000ths per shim, and 10/1000ths per shim. The combination of these will handle any sort of combination that you need to index this properly. First thing we're going to do is install our compression washer, and we want to install it crown side toward the shoulder, toward the back of the slide. Okay, the crown is the arch this way, right? The convex side versus concave side. So the crown side faces the back of the slide, and we'll get that on there. And then what we're going to do is install our comp without any shims to start with. And what that's going to do is give us a baseline that we can then establish how many shims we need to add to make it clock properly. So let's install this, thread it on by hand. Now remember that piece of paper I told you about earlier. What we're going to want to do is take this piece of paper and wrap it around so that when we put our wrench on, we're not marring the surface. Okay? The black nitride, guys, is very, very tough, very scratch resistant, and in all practical applications, unscratchable. And for this purpose, I'm going to use it without paper just so it's easier to see on camera. But what we're going to want to do is make sure we're not using, again, just like the vise, where we're not, putting it in something that's got huge dents and dings and all that good stuff. Sometimes these wrenches, especially if you're a auto mechanic type guy doing some weekend warrior stuff, you can beat these up pretty good. So whatever it is, we just want to make sure we're not, using our garbage wrenches. If you guys buy a stainless or a heat tinted comp from us, you for sure want to use some protection in between. It's much softer than these black nitride ones, and if you don't have protection in there, and or if you're using a junky wrench, you will dent it up and you will potentially ruin that comp. So guys, take precautions on that. So what we want to do, we've got this screwed on by hand. Let's go ahead and crank this down, and what you're going to do is you're going to compress that washer, right? And it's going to become flat, and you're going to feel tension, or it's going to be harder and harder to turn, and then you're going to feel a pretty distinct wall where this has hit the back and stopped turning. That's good enough. So now we can see the barrel and the comp are not timed properly, or I should say the comp on the barrel is not timed properly. And what we want to do is have this top surface of the comp, the porting of the comp facing straight up, but we can use this wrench flat and logo as a reference point where it's flat and parallel to the top of the slide. So the easiest way to do this, guys, is to figure out in rough estimates how far off in degrees we are from where we want to be. I like to use a simple protractor, but we can, eyeball this all day long and get pretty dang close results. And the reality is we only have to be so close. We can fudge a little bit, tighter than normal, a little looser than normal. Within a degree or 2 degrees is fine. There's plenty of tension on that spring washer to compensate for a slight error. But what we want to do is kind of eyeball this and figure out what degree we're sitting, and then we can figure out where we want to be. So I'm about 48 degrees over rotated, meaning when I add shims it's not going to clock as far, which is perfect. So let's just say 47 degrees is what we need to add shims to make up. Now the math comes in to establish how many shims we need and what stack up of shims we need. We need to do a little bit of math. This is a 28 thread per inch barrel. If you take 1 inch, because it's threads per inch, so 28 threads within that inch, take 1 inch, divide that by 28, it gets you just under 36 thousandths. And what that represents is for every full rotation of turning you're moving the comp in and out by 36 thousandths of an inch. So if you take that number, 36 thousandths, all we have to do is figure out rotation we're off, so 360 degree rotation. So let's put that in our calculator, 360 degrees divided by the angle that we're off, what do we say, 47 degrees. That gets you roughly, actually this is backwards. So we want to do 47 degrees divided by 360 degrees. And that gets us 0.13. Okay, so that's 0.13 of a rotation. And we're going to times that by that earlier number of 36 thousandths times 0.036. That gets us 4 thousandths and 7 tenths. Well, 5 thousandths is going to be way closer than we need it to be. So that's what we're going to use, is a 5 thou shim. Just a single 5 thou shim, and the rest of the shims here we don't need, so I'm going to set it aside. But now what we can do is pull that 5 thousandths shim out. We can remove our comp and add that shim onto it. Okay, kind of drop your shim down in on the comp. And what you want to do, see right now, that thread or that shim dropped down and is kind of on my threads and is pinching in between. So if you remove it, kind of hold it up like this and then thread it on, you'll be good to go. All right, now when we tighten this up, we should be golden. All right, take it out and kind of hold it up, looking at, looks like I could rotate it just a little bit more to be perfectly in line with the slide. Oh, need to leave enough room for your wrench flat. And it's perfect. Nice and flat, parallel. And that's the full installation, guys. Nothing else to it. Keep your shims, because if you swap this over to another firearm, guaranteed your threads are going to be different. The location and clocking of those threads are going to be different from barrel to barrel. That's why you need all these different shims. So yeah, every handgun you mount this on, every barrel you mount this on is going to have a different shim stack up. But that's it, guys. From here, we're going out and shooting.